Hey guys, welcome to This Week in DeFi, the podcast where we go over the coolest stuff that happened last week in DeFi. So last week, there's some pretty cool stuff that happened. Pump.fun launched a DEX, and Resupply, a new stablecoin project, went live. Before we get into that, just want to remind everyone to subscribe to our YouTube. And yeah, let's get into it. So Pump.fun is everyone on Solana's favorite meme coin launchpad and everyone on Ethereum's least favorite one. And it's whatever you think about it, it's super successful. They've gotten tons of volume, tons of fees. And why are they launching a DEX? So before they were just this meme coin launchpad, and after $69,000 market cap, the coins would get seeded into Radium, and then the user would now go to Radium. So now Pump.fun has their own DEX, PumpSwap, and the users are staying on Pump. So this is obviously a very good business move for them. I believe it's a very simple V1 or V2 pool. So that sounds a little bit primitive, but actually it may make sense for these kinds of long tail tokens. So yeah, very good business move. Cool to see, and a lesson for builders that you really need to own the users if you want to have a lasting business. The second cool project last week was Resupply, and Resupply is a stablecoin project, but it's not just another stablecoin project. So the kind of interesting thing about it for me is that they have this hippo here because it's a rehypothecation or rehypothecation project. And that means that it's not just a simple CDP, like the collateral you're using is actually a lending position. So you can lend into Curve lend or Frax lend, and then you can deposit that here, or you can just deposit your Curve USD or Frax USD directly here, and the Resupply will do that on the back end, where they deposit into the lending market and then use that to mint a stablecoin. And why would you do that? There's a bunch of reasons. One is that you could do leverage farming. So you could, when you put your assets into Curve Lend or Frax Lend, you're already earning some interest on it. And then you can mint another stablecoin against that position and then farm again. So that's at least one other leg of stablecoin farming. And it seems like you can actually loop that a few times here. And then you might be worried about borrow costs. But the cool thing here is that as a stablecoin project, just like Aave's Go, they have the ability to control the borrow interest rates. So why are they able to do that? In a regular lending market like Compound or something, or Aave on their lending side, the collateral that you borrow, like the stablecoins you borrow, are supplied by the user. So there's a limited amount. So there has to be like a supply and demand curve for that, that's where the kink comes in. That's when the interest rates rise, when more people want to borrow than there is supply. And that's hard to match in real time. So the borrow rates can spike when there's a lot of leverage demand. But for stablecoins like MakerDAO or Aave Go, those can be minted on demand. The governance in those cases would set the rate of the borrow. And then, so that borrow rate would stay fixed as long as the governance proposals allow it to. And that's the same thing here. So this is a stablecoin that allows the borrow rates to be much more predictable. What they're saying is that the borrow rates are going to be either half the underlying fee rate, half the risk-free rate, or 2%, whatever is greater. Right now, they're using sFrax USD's APY as the oracle for the risk-free rate. So if we go here, this is frax.com. You can earn 6.6% on sFrax USD, which is quite good. And half of that is going to be around 3.2 or 3.3%, so 3.2% right now. So that is the borrow cost. And right now that's actually higher than the base lending rate. So you can get liquidated if you let your if you leverage a lot and you let your borrow rate keep on piling up, your borrow interest. But theoretically, if this base rate rises, like this is a specific situation, like if there's more borrow on Curve Lend and the base rate rises, then this borrow rate could be lower than the lending rate. You can see that here, half the underlying lending fee rate. So if the lending fee rate, how the underlying lending fee rate starts getting over this, then it gets pretty interesting where your borrow is actually less than your lending APR. So technically it's like you're getting like a free borrow or something. So yeah, it's a really interesting protocol and it's increasing capital efficiency. If you think about it, it's also increasing the risk of these positions compared to a raw curve lending position. You're obviously increasing risk because you're borrowing against it. There's a possibility of a liquidation. You're also adding like smart contract risk. But to me, this is still quite interesting. It's not quite as this rehypothecation isn't quite as crazy as it may seem at first because this stablecoin is limited to using stable collateral. So your borrow asset and your lending asset are the same kind of denomination. They're like very extremely correlated. And yeah, so to me, and also for the borrowers, like there's less risk of bad debt and stuff. There's less risk of bad debt to less risk of systemic debt issues because they're able to control these borrow rates and they seem like they're going to keep them relatively low. So lower risk of liquidations, lower risk of bad debts and all that. To me, the other cool thing about this is that for DeFi, like these, whether it's lending protocols or stablecoins, everything's over collateralized, which makes everything safe-ish, but it also decreases the capital efficiency. So capital efficiency is like a huge issue that DeFi needs to solve. And this is, I think, a pretty decent way to solve it. So in traditional finance, the way they solve it is through just trust me, bro, rehypothecation in a opaque way without transparency. But here, everything's on chain. You know where the collateral is coming from. You know what's going on with it. You can look at the underlying markets. Yeah, to me, this is like actually a good way to do things. It sounds a little bit crazy at first using lending positions to mint another stablecoin, but I think it's not as bad as it sounds. And I think I really do this kind of thing where DeFi is being more capital efficient. And yeah, I hope it continues. Yeah, you can check it out at Resupply.fi. There are some good opportunities on here. And yeah, I also suggest you can, if you like this kind of content, you can subscribe to our YouTube channel. And we have a pretty good newsletter as well at todayindefi.com. So yeah, until next week.